Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Edwards Air Force Base for the 370th Flight Test Squadron Change of Command. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Grantier, and I'm honored to serve as your narrator for today's ceremony. Today's ceremony is considered an indoor ceremony. In July, 3 o'clock, 110 degrees. As a reminder, all military personnel will stand at attention during the singing of our national anthem and should not salute. We invite our civilian guests to participate by standing and placing their right hand over their hearts. During today's ceremony, Col Christina L. Hopper will preside over the 370th Flight Test Squadron Change of Command, at which Lt Col Raven J. Leclair will relinquish command of the 370th Flight Test Squadron to Lt Col Philip J. Downing. Before we start today's ceremony, we would like to take this opportunity to recognize our distinguished and special guests in attendance. Please hold your applause until everyone has been introduced. We'd like to extend a warm welcome to Lt Col Leclair's wife, Dr. Joni Chapman, and their children, Luca and Celine. Mother-in-law, Miss Regina Chapman, Lt Col Downing's wife, Kate Downing, and their children, Piper, Nora, Skylar, Archer, Hudson, and Cooper. Mother, Miss Catherine Downing, brother, Mr. Michael Downing, mother-in-law, Karen Winterly, and father-in-law, Mr. David Basham. And we would also like to welcome from Air Force Material Command, Colonel Edward Hale, Reserve Advisor to the Commander. From the 412th Test Wing, Colonel James Hayes, Deputy Commander. We are grateful to all commanders, directors, friends and family, and co-workers in attendance. We welcome you all. Please join us in a round of applause for all of our guests. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the arrival of the official party. Remain standing for the presentation of the colors by the Blue Eagles Honor Guard, the playing of our national anthem by Lt Col Philip Downing's daughters Piper, Nora, and Skylar, the invocation by former 370th Flight Test Squadron Commander and now Pastor, Lt Col John Michael, United States Air Force Reserve retired.
Present hearts.
Can you see by the dawn's early light what so bright
Colors turn. March.
Good afternoon to you all. I want to give a special thank you to Rost in Dublin for inviting me on behalf of the 370th Flight Test Squadron to be part of this ceremony today. An invocation is an act of petitioning and treating a higher power for favor or support. And so before I pray, I just want to share a few verses from Psalm 18 of King David to set the tone for this petition as we start today. The Lord is my rock and my fortress, and my God, my rock, in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I call upon the Lord who is worthy to be praised, and I'm saved from my enemies. With the merciful you show yourself merciful, with the blameless you show yourself blameless. For you save a humble people, but the arrogant you bring down. For it is you who light my lamp. The Lord my God lightens my darkness. This God, his way is perfect. The word of the Lord proves true. He is a shield for all those who take refuge in him. He trains my hands for war, so that my arms can bend a bow of bronze. You have given me the shield of your salvation, and your right hand supported me, and your gentleness made me great. Now please join me as we offer up our humble appeal for favor and blessing from God. O Lord, we come today to seek blessing and favor upon the occasion of the change of command for the Flying Elvi of the 370th Flight Test Squadron. As the Flying Elvi have executed their missions over the last 2 years, it's been a blessing to witness the wisdom and insight by which Lt Col Raven Leclair, his wife Joni, and their children Luca and Celine have fulfilled the calling to serve the missions of both the 413th Flight Test Group and the 412th Operations Group. And as we reflect on this chapter of the 370th and anticipate the next, please bless the spirit with which the Flying Elvi embody professionalism, depth of character, life experience, and diversity of Air Force expertise. The spirit of their missions is vast, complex, and it's here that the Flying Elvi shine brilliantly, Lord. And still the foundation of the Flying Elvi family remains one of authentic care for one another. Family first, mission always. And so I lift up and seek supernatural favor for vision and understanding as Lt Col Phil Downing, along with his wife Kate, and their children Piper, Nora, Skylar, Archie, Hudson, and Cooper, accept the duty of being servant leaders to the 370th Flight Test Squadron. May their proven spirit of service, sacrifice, and care toward all embody the heart they bring to this season of command. We humbly ask you, Lord, for knowledge and wisdom for Colonel Downing, for both transparency and discernment as the Flying Elvi embrace their missions and the Edwards Air Force Base community. As we appeal to you, Lord, may your will be done in all things. Amen.
Thank you, Blue Eagles Honor Guard, Piper, Nora, and Skylar. That was absolutely beautiful. And Pastor Michael, thank you for your great words. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. It is now my great pleasure to introduce our presiding officer, Col Christina Hopper, Commander, 413th Flight Test Group.
It's really hot out here today. I feel like I'm already drenched and I changed flight suits. This is my second flight suit change today. So I just want to take this opportunity to say good afternoon to everyone and welcome to our DVs, mission partners, to the members of the 370th, to the families of both Colonel Leclair and Colonel Downing, welcome. Piper, Nora, and Skylar, that was a beautiful job on the national anthem today. And it's so special to me when families participate in and contribute to the festivities of ceremonies like these. It highlights that ceremonies like today represent one of those special days for the families and for our Air Force, because we have the opportunity to honor one remarkable leader and welcome another outstanding leader, and to celebrate the enduring legacy of a squadron whose history continues to shape our future. The history of the 370th Flight Test Squadron reaches back to one of aviation's defining moments. In February of 1944, the squadron flew as part of the massive raid on Truk Lagoon during Operation Hailstorm. At that time, Truk was considered the Gibraltar of the Pacific, a heavily defended Japanese stronghold that many believed was untouchable. But through meticulous planning, exceptional skill, and the willingness of air crews to take calculated risks, Allied forces struck with overwhelming effect and fundamentally changed the course of the Pacific campaign. That mission wasn't simply about courage. It was about innovation, preparation, and giving our warfighters an advantage before the next fight. More than 80 years later, that same spirit lives on here in the 370th Flight Test Squadron. The aircraft may be different. The technology is certainly different, but the mission remains remarkably familiar. Solve the hard problems before someone else has to fight with the consequences. That is a legacy worth protecting, and one every airman in this squadron should be incredibly proud to move forward with. Today, we also have the privilege of recognizing the leader who has helped carry that legacy over the last several years, Lt Col Raven Leclair. Now, Ross's story is like none that I've ever heard before. He grew up on a hippie commune, did y'all know that? In Santa Cruz, California, and he discovered flying at just 9 years of age. And from that moment, he never wanted to do anything else. He worked to pay for flying lessons. He earned scholarships to attend UC Berkeley. He started graduate level work when he was still an undergraduate. And somehow in all of that, he found time to meet the love of his life, Joni. While he was at UC Berkeley, Ross began in the Army ROTC before he noticed something important. It looked like the fighter pilots were having a lot more fun. So he made the switch to Air Force ROTC, and I'd say that turned out to be a pretty good career decision. Over the past 23 years, Ross has embodied what developmental test is all about: relentless curiosity. Whether flying experimental aircraft, God bless the sound of freedom. Whether he's advancing flight test education or helping build opportunities for underrepresented students through a space science charter school, he has never stopped asking the question, what's next? But as much as he loves airplanes, if you ask Ross what he's most proud of, I don't think he'll start with airplanes. I think he'll start with his wife and family. Joni, thank you for your extraordinary service to our nation. Let me tell you about Lieutenant Colonel Joni Leclair. As an Air Force Reserve physician, she led vaccination efforts during COVID, deployed when New York needed help most, and somehow she managed to balance an incredibly demanding medical career while supporting Ross's equally demanding one. Military families don't succeed because of one uniform. They succeed because of teammates like you. Luca and Celine. Celine is at the CDC today, but I want them to know that your dad talks about you constantly. Luca, anyone who can land an airplane at 7 years old has already set a pretty high bar for the rest of us. So I'm kind of impressed with you. And to Celine, from everything I've heard about her, she brings a lot of laughter to you and to the rest of your family. Rost often says he wants you to never stop dreaming, never give up, and always find those 30 seconds of courage when it matters most. That's great advice. Not just for you, but I think for all of us. Your dad is pretty wise. Rost, I want to thank you for leading the squadron with vision, humility, and an innovative spirit. As you move into your new role as, and this is a mouthful, Mission Director at Doolittle Labs and Defense Innovation Unit and Reserve Support Unit Deputy Commander, I know that your talents and your efforts will continue shaping the future of developmental test and test pilot school. Thank you for leaving the 370th stronger than you found it. Now, fortunately for all of us, we're handing the guidon off to someone who is uniquely prepared to build on the foundation that Rost established. Lt Col Phil Downing also grew up in California. He grew up in an aviation community. His dad owned an airplane, and so I would say that he was destined to end up here. Dublin was active in the Civil Air Patrol, and somewhere along the way, he discovered a personal love and affinity for music that led to his involvement in marching band, jazz band, and orchestra. And as you can see, he has passed that love and that talent onto his children. So what I'm thinking is that if flying test aircraft and leading this squadron doesn't work out for you, then you can have your next career performing at squadron Christmas parties. In all seriousness though, that second career won't be necessary for Dublin because he has spent the last 17 and a half years living out a childhood dream of becoming an Air Force pilot, and he's been extremely successful at it. Along the way, he's deployed to Afghanistan. He earned last year the Air Force Reserve Command Safety Crew Member of Distinction Award for safely recovering an F-16 with a major engine fire. And today, he stands among only a handful of pilots who is qualified to fly the X-62A, the Air Force's remarkable flying laboratory that is advancing artificial intelligence and machine learning for future combat aviation. That's kind of impressive. But what impresses me more about Dublin is not his resume, and it's not hearing about all of his flying accolades. It's hearing about what inspires him. And when I asked him what inspires him, he wouldn't say airplanes and he wouldn't say awards. He would say his family. Kate, thank you. I want you to hear that personally from me. While Dublin has been deployed in TDY, you've carried an incredible load, raising 6 amazing children, homeschooling, serving your community through Antelope Valley Foster Friends, and continually pointing your family toward faith and service. Our commanders can only lead because of families like yours, quietly carrying so much behind the scenes. So I want to thank you for everything that you've sacrificed for your family and our country. And to Piper, Nora, Skylar, Archer, Hudson, and Cooper, you are your dad's greatest source of pride. Archer, where are you? Happy belated birthday. I hear you already have the goal of becoming a fighter pilot, so you've definitely come to the right ceremony today. Dublin, the next few years will challenge this squadron in exciting ways. New aircraft, new missions, new technologies, artificial intelligence, challenging manpower, for sure, an increasing demand to deliver developmental tests faster than ever before without compromising the discipline and rigor that define this organization. Fortunately, those challenges don't call for someone who has all the answers. They simply call for someone who knows how to build great teams, empower talented airmen, and keep the squadron focused on the right priorities. I know you're that leader. Dublin told me that his favorite quote is something that C.S. Lewis once wrote. We all want progress, but if you're on the wrong road, progress means turning back around and getting on the right road. Developmental test has always been about finding the right road before the rest of the force has to travel on it. Sometimes that means validating bold ideas. Sometimes it means discovering what doesn't work. Both require courage, both require integrity, and both are essential to ensuring America's warfighters remain the best in the world. And that brings me back to Truck Lagoon. The airmen who flew that historic mission couldn't have imagined autonomous aircraft, artificial intelligence, or digital engineering. but they would absolutely recognize the spirit of the men and women serving in the 370th today. The same commitment to innovation, the same willingness to accept measured risk, the same determination to ensure that when our nation calls, Americans airmen have every possible advantage. Rost, thank you once again for leading with courage. Dublin, congratulations on earning this opportunity to lead this extraordinary squadron. You're going to do a great job. And to the incredible airmen of the 370th, your history is remarkable, but your future is even brighter. I can't wait to see where you take this squadron next. Thank you all, and may the force be with you.
Thank you, Colonel Hopper. That was amazing. I had no idea that Ross grew up on a hippie commune. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Colonel Hopper will now present the Meritorious Service Medal to Lt Col Leclair. Please stand. Attention to orders. The Department of the Air Force presents the Meritorious Service Medal to Lt Col Raven J. Leclair in recognition of his distinguished performance from 14 April 2024 to 23 July 2026. Lt Col Raven J. Leclair distinguished himself in the performance of outstanding service to the United States as Commander, 370th Flight Test Squadron, 413th Flight Test Group, Edwards Air Force Base, California. During this period as Commander, Lt Col Leclair expertly transformed his squadron to support 16 organizations and lead Air Force Test Center's modernization priorities through the test support of 412th and 96 test wings, United States Air Force Test Pilot School, and Stanford Artificial Intelligence Studio. His squadron executed over 5,000 military personnel appropriation days and 2,500 sorties. His team created the Headquarters Air Force-sponsored Reserve Officer Training Corps Cadet Test Internship, utilizing the sharpest minds to solve real test challenges. As an experimental test pilot, he enabled the first ever integration of artificial intelligence on the F-35, paving the way for the new offensive and defensive capabilities. Finally, he was handpicked to brief the Air Force Reserve Commander on critical force modernization test role and lead a 6-person multidisciplinary envoy to Taiwan, instructing the Taiwanese on test and evaluation, eventually briefing the Taiwanese Chief of Staff. The singularly distinctive accomplishments of Lt Col Leclair were grateful upon himself and the United States Air Force. Thank you, Colonel Hopper. Ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated once again. It is my pleasure to introduce Lt Col Leclair.
The good news is too hot for tears, so you get none of them, I guess. I'll try to speak fast, and I'll cut out whatever I can. I know it's really hot. I appreciate you all being here. But to the men and women of a 370th Flight Test Squadron, Ross' reign of terror is now over. In spite of my best efforts to impede progress, you achieved incredible greatness. You faced every challenge with grace and ended up carrying me like that ballast in the back of the F-16 that you flew with today, carefully so you don't depart controlled flight. Team, I have only 3 things to pass along today. Thank you, I'm sorry, and who let Steve narrate again? Actually, are we ready is my question. You know how you meet people that are exceptional at everything? That's not me. That's your next commander, Lt Downing. Dublin is better than me in every way. He's nicer, he plays more musical instruments, he flies more aircraft, he flies aircraft better than me when they're on fire, and he has 3 times more kids in his arms at any given moment than any CDC provider. And most infuriating, look at that mustache. Look at it. It's amazing. As you near the end of command, you realize how that once-in-a-lifetime experience is about to come to an end. And for a moment, you think about holding on too tight because so much of your identity is wrapped up in taking care of the squadron. And then you remember how much you dislike dictators. In fact, you've been trained your entire career to bomb them. And you realize that we do these things for a reason, so that when timing doesn't quite work out and you're stuck with Rost as your commander, eventually it comes to an end and new life, new ideas, new creativity, and new leadership gets injected into the squadron culture. This is the way we do it, and we do it for a very, very good reason. Dublin is the best reason I can imagine to get the heck out of the way and let him make magic happen and clean up my mess on aisle 3. Plus, I'll be honest, my tank is empty. I ran a good race, the best I knew how. I gave it everything and more, and I left nothing for that swim back to shore. But lucky for me, the 370th front office doubles as a pool floaty, and they rescued all of us, especially me. Luckily, love is that magic that when you give it away, you end up with more. And in this way, my tank is overflowing. And although I have deep sorrow for leaving my 370th family, you have filled my heart, and I am so incredibly grateful. Here comes the tears, sorry, for this gift. It has been the experience of a lifetime, and I never knew I actually wanted to have it. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve you in the best ways that I knew how. I promised I'd be a crap filter, and I gave it my best shot, but it turns out my targeting system was unprepared for all the inbound threats. Some made it through. Colonel Hopper, thanks for not firing me and letting me lead. Thanks for being a crap filter and supporting me in ways I'll probably never fully understand or know. I'll never forget it. For those of you I failed, I'm sorry. I fail a lot, just ask my wife. Thank you, Joni, for letting me play leadership with my friends. You are the most under-recognized and unappreciated person I know. You are my rock and a champion, and you save lives, you teach future doctors, and you teach them not to suck. Thank you. We are all in your debt when those doctors end up saving our lives, and I'm so excited that your dream somehow managed to include the Antelope Valley for just a little bit longer. I hope to be able to continue to support your dreams as you have mine for so many years. To my baby girl, Celine, who is not here because it's way too hot, she is pure magic and brings so much joy, and I accept that your brother is your favorite person in the world, not me. Luca, my son, you taught me so much about command. You taught me how to be present, how to be brave, how to be patient, and you showed me firsthand that 30 seconds of courage is all it takes to get through the hardest challenges in life, but only if your team is there to catch you once that 30 seconds is over, because you can't hold your breath forever. Thank you, team. I couldn't hold my breath forever, and you carried me. Luca, remember when you and your sister are flying a two-ship later when you're a little bit older, never forget that your flight call sign is Snuggleboo 1. Men and women of the 370 Flight Test Squadron, you're the most powerful weapon in any arsenal that has ever existed in the history of this planet. You can make anything happen as a result. After a good mentoring session from Ashley and a good, very kind, very gentle feedback session from Dawn, I got to ride your coattails and admire and awe at your abilities. To our active duty counterparts, thank you for your friendship, for your trust in the 370th, fellow squadron commanders and test professionals across the base. I learned more from you than those silly high-ranking leaders over here. Budget and solvency, base infrastructure, making prima donna squadron commanders happy. Sheesh. I mean, what's so hard about your job? I kid, obviously. Your job is impossible, sir. Thank you for doing your very best to train, to equip, to provide resources, and to delegate authority so that we can solve the hardest problems facing our nation. When I took command in April 2024, Ukraine casualties included 11,000 civilians and 600 children, with over 500,000 total at that time. Now, there's over 2 million casualties, more than 500,000 dead by far. These numbers are tragic and unacceptable, and it is not the only ongoing conflict we have. Technology is being used to innovate, and it is cheap, and it is the first conflict that I'm aware of that has autonomy at the forefront of the battlefield. Baha, if we're still asking ourselves what place autonomy, machine learning, reinforcement learning, and I dare to use the phrase AI has in combat, we need to talk to those 2 million casualties, and then we need to ask ourselves, are we ready? The families don't care whether it was deterministic or non-deterministic technology that killed their loved ones, they are still gone. Are we ready? Are we not just strategically scary, but are we tactically and technologically doing everything we can to place as many bets as we can afford on the things that we need to do today and to integrate the relevant technologies into our new and legacy weapon systems? Drones with computer vision are identifying and striking targets hundreds of miles away. Other killer drone interceptors are hunting adversary drones without human oversight. And they are operating in GPS-denied environments. Unmanned ground vehicles are delivering supplies and evacuating casualties. And other non-deterministic systems are geolocating enemy positions by scanning social media and matching surroundings with open source information. Do I know, Baha, what AI has, what it's good for in combat? Absolutely not. But someone does, and we need to figure out what it is and what it isn't. We need to do it quickly. We need to integrate existing legacy things onto relevant timelines and actually listen to the warfighter. That's probably even more important than all the flashy buzzwords. And most importantly, we need our leadership to clear the path through the acquisition nightmare. When I took command, I proclaimed that our mission was peace through strategic deterrence, enabled by technological strength and superiority. I asked if we were strategically scary enough to stop the next Ukraine, or at least decisively end it with overwhelming technological superiority. The answer, I fear, is we are not. The other answer, I fear, is that no one is. This may be the new norm. 2 million casualties. I understand now more clearly than ever that if we don't do meaningfully and permanently accelerate change, if we don't follow our test leaders like Sig Black, Bubbles, From, Dilo Danilowski, Coco, Rachel Kynard, Alex Yarvinsky, Blaine Smolin, sorry, I'll stop. No, I won't. Kayla Smoot, Jeffrey Henry, Staff Sergeant Nathan Simon, Saad, Marie. All right, now I'll stop. I'll list the roster of our entire squadron and the entire squadron of this base. All you brilliant leaders and support leaders are the ones that we need to rely on to solve tomorrow's problem. Because, as Colonel Tower stated, tomorrow may be too late. We need you to help us make sure that our loved ones come home safe. When I took command, I stated I was going to push for transformative efforts for hiring to ensure the 370th can become part of the strategic solution. It turns out you didn't need any pushing at all. You were already way out in front of me. You humbled me, and then you achieved results beyond anything I could have imagined. When AFTC needs leadership and test expertise, they come to the 370th, at least second, maybe not first, after they run out of active duty options. But that's good enough for me, sir. We are here to serve. You worked tirelessly in every one of your unique area of expertise. You worked nights, you worked weekends, and you were often the crew in every single platform competing on a test mission, from the tanker to the chase aircraft to the bomber to the fighter or even the Cessna. And you did it all so very, very well. With Dublin parting the waves and being the best crap filter while simultaneously flying an AI-enabled jet and a tanker at the same time, I step aside joyfully. To the men and women of the 370th Flight Test Squadron, my career is complete, and you all complete me. I love you all. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the change of command ceremony. Colonel Hopper and Lieutenant Colonel Downing, please join Lieutenant Colonel Leclair at center stage. Attention to orders. Department of the Air Force, Headquarters, United States Air Force, Washington, D.C., Special Order Number GO26-4, dated 12 June 2026. Under the provisions of Air Force Instruction 51-604, by order of Col Christina Hopper, Commander, 413th Flight Test Group, Lieutenant Colonel Leclair relinquishes command, and Lieutenant Colonel Downing assumes command as Commander, 370th Flight Test Squadron, effective 24 July 2026. Ladies and gentlemen, you may now be seated. It is customary for the commander's name to be on the unit's flagship, the mighty KC-135. Please direct your attention to the KC-135, where Master Sergeant Fuller will now reveal the name of the new Flight Test Squadron commander. And now Senior Airman Blaine Smotherman will give Lt Col Downing his first salute. Ladies and gentlemen, the commander of the 370th Flight Test Squadron, Lt Col Philip J. Downing.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. It wouldn't be a change of command with without a bunch of thank yous to start. So I first want to say this was a team effort for this whole event. I want to take a moment to recognize some folks. The first folk I'd like to recognize is, first of all, God. My Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, I would not be where I am today without his salvation. And it is by the grace of God I stand before you today. And he's led me to this moment. I'd also like to thank my family. I promised I wouldn't cry. My wife of 15 years, Kate, thank you so much. Many moves behind us, late work nights, flight upgrades, deployments, TDYs, you name it, we've done it. And now as I step into this command position, there is so much more ahead of me and so much more ahead of us. I apologize right now for the extra time out of the house, but your steadfast love and your steadfast support means more than you can imagine. I'd also like to thank my daughters, Piper, Nora, and Skylar. Wow. I am just so incredibly amazed at that performance you gave of the national anthem. I was holding back the tears, and you are using your gifts for the glory of God. Thank you for blessing us with that. I'd like to really quickly give a token of appreciation to my family in the form of a few gifts, so bear with me as I run off the stage and hand those to them. It's gonna get super awkward because I got a lot of kids. All right. A few more thank yous, bear with me. To my parents, my mom, Kathy, and my dad, John, who couldn't be here today. Thank you for bringing me up in a way that helps me to understand that hard work, determination, and perseverance lead to results in life. Thank you. We are all products of our parental upbringing, and I am grateful for being raised under the direction of parents who are also believers and pointing me towards Jesus in everything. As well, like Colonel Hopper alluded to, I attribute my love for aviation to my father and growing up in the aviation community that we did. So thank you, Dad. I know you're watching from afar, but I've never worked a day in my life because every single day that I come to work, it is a joy and it doesn't feel like work to me. To my family and friends that took time out of their busy schedules to be here, thank you for showing your support. It means more than you can imagine. To Colonel Hopper, Chief Stiller, and the rest of the 413th Flight Test Group staff that made it here, they traveled a long way to be here, and I see that effort, and I am eternally grateful for the opportunity you're providing me by taking command. The LVI are an amazing group of people. My whole goal over this last week was to show you that, and I hope that I did. To my front office staff, Ashley, Carol, Dawn, Melissa, you guys are a rock star team. Of all the things that happened as far as this event, leading up to briefings, planning, paperwork, setup, teardown, this is all orchestrated by them. Thank you for taking care of business, and I couldn't be prouder of the effort you put forth. And that goes also to the members of the squadron that took time out of their day to help set up, tear down, and plan. To Rost, thank you for being a leader who pushes people to recognize their potential and empowers them to realize that potential as well. You are a good friend. You have been a great leader and a mentor to me, and you've been there in those moments as a shoulder to cry on as well. Thank you. You've set an extraordinarily high bar for me to follow, and I just pray that I can get close, because I'll still be amongst the stars if I do. And finally, to all the distinguished guests that are with us today, Colonel Hale, Colonel Hayes, Colonel Bell, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here. I see the support towards our total force, and I hear it loud and clear. Thank you for taking that time. Okay, now over to the speech. I really struggled with what to talk about at this speech. It's kind of one of those hurdles that you think about at your change of command, and it was painfully clear to me about a month ago. If you look on the wall, Torch 11 was lost approximately 1 month ago, and it is a terrible loss that this community suffered. Unfortunately, many of our reservists in this squadron had front row seats to that event, either in the moment that it happened or in the general aftermath afterwards. It is an imprinted memory that I think about daily, and it replays in my head over and over. But I thank you for the 412 Test Wing, their response, their opportunity for grief, for remembrance, and for support. Every single person who sets foot in a military aircraft understands there is an inherent risk that they take on when they strap on their airplane. Whether it be an F-16 or a KC-135, I know every time that I get in an airplane, it could be my last time. But that doesn't stop me from doing it. Risk is inherent in our daily lives. In the flight test community, we take mitigations to those risks seriously. We plan, and we mitigate, and we plan, and we mitigate, trying to buy down risk as much as possible. But we can never get rid of risk altogether. Even a simple task like chopping wood in my backyard carries inherent risk. So why do we do these flights even if they are not zero risk? Well, that's what I want to talk about. It's because flight test matters. During the last 2 months of my combat deployment to Afghanistan, my squadron moved from Kandahar Air Base to Bagram Air Base due to runway construction that would not allow us to continue to operate off the shorter runway. The move to Bagram was uneventful, but approximately 2 weeks after we arrived, one of our squadron members crashed into the side of a mountain with his F-16 on their way back from combat. The mishap investigation found out that it was what is called controlled flight into terrain. A perfectly good airplane, a perfectly good pilot, flew into the side of a mountain. Captain James Mano Steele died that day on April 4th, 2013, for the freedoms that Americans so desperately enjoy. Just 3 months prior, on January 28th, 2013, the brother of my college roommate passed away when flying an F-16 mission over the Adriatic Sea. This incident was classified as spatial disorientation, a phenomenon when a pilot is unable to discern which way is up and which way is down. Major Lucas Gaza Grunther lost his life that night, fighting for the freedoms that Americans so desperately enjoy. Shortly after I left my first assignment at Shaw, I was at Misawa Air Base, Japan, and I'll remember my squadron commander coming to me, my previous squadron had just entered combat operations in Syria under Operation Inherent Resolve. And my squadron commander informed me that one of my previous squadron members had passed away on December 1st, 2014. Captain William Pyro Du Bois lost his life fighting for the freedoms that Americans so desperately enjoy. So when I first applied for test pilot school, my motives were simple. You only have two options when you're a CAF fighter pilot. One is weapons school or one is test pilot school. Those are your options for progression. Well, I was not a weapons school candidate because I did not fit that mold. But test pilot school was still open for me because I had an engineering degree. And despite my lack of smarts and having to get an academic waiver, I was able to get accepted. And coincidentally, both my family and my wife's family were from California, so it seemed like a good deal. It only took 2 application cycles for me to get selected because I'm not that bright. But I was excited because I wanted to be closer to where I grew up. I wanted my kids to know their grandparents. And that's something that we hadn't had up to that point in my military career. And after test pilot school, I was afforded the opportunity to fly the Mighty Mighty Viper at the 416 Flight Test Squadron, School's Rule. Despite its fine lines and foreboding looks, she's pushing 50, fellas. Maintaining a relevant fighting force with older aircraft requires modernization. And that was most of the job that we were doing. One of the programs that I was fortunate enough to be involved in is the Automatic Ground Collision Avoidance System Program, or AGCAS. In simple terms, the jet itself determines where it's at and where the ground is using an onboard data set. And if it determines that it's going to get too close to the ground, it automatically recovers from hitting the ground without pilot intervention. And while I wasn't involved with the initial testing of the system, I was involved with follow-on testing, integration, and post-block testing, pre-block testing on older aircraft. I remember talking to my wife vividly and showing her the YouTube video of the first AGCAS save of a B course student as he experienced a G-lock and pointed towards the ground in maximum afterburner, his jet exceeding Mach 1 and then recovering itself. And I can see her shaking her head right now because it's probably still hitting her like it's still hitting me. And why does it hit me? It's because it could be anybody. It could be anybody in any airplane that happens to. But to this day, that system has saved over 13 lives, and it's because flight test matters. As a pilot participating in the AGCAS program, we test systems by replicating scenarios of previous incidents that the AGCAS would have saved the pilot's lives. One of those test points is affectionately called AGCAS Mountain. And it's an artificial mountain that we place in the middle of the airspace and we fly towards and we see if the jet recovers. Every time I fly that point, I think of Mano and how the jet would have recovered itself and saved his life. AGCAS was fielded 6 months after Mano died. Flight test matters. All right, that's the solemn part of the speech. Now time for a joke. Let's see. So I'm a father, and so you guys are all nerds, and so we're going to tell a father-dad joke that's about nerdiness. Did you know that when someone slaps you at a high frequency at megahertz? And besides that, I hear they aren't making 12-inch rulers any longer. All right, back to it. So each one of the people that I talked about has a profound impact of how I viewed flight test or the Air Force early on in my career. And their impact and the sacrifice they paid is lasting and relevant. But how does that relate to the 370th? That's why we're here, right? Well, let me tell you. The 370th Flight Test Squadron is composed of nearly 60 officers, enlisted, and civilian members. And as the Air Force's only reserve developmental test squadron, we are likely one of the most unique, and in my opinion, the coolest squadrons in the Air Force. By nature, we are a squadron focused on test support. So test support's a very wide mission set, and the 370th has historically provided air refueling test support to the 412th Test Wing. Where else can you find where else can you find a squadron full of test pilots, boom operators, flight test engineers, sensor operators, AI specialists, cybersecurity test personnel, and all the support staff to go with them? The answer is nowhere else other than here. No squadron in the Air Force matches our diversity, and it is one of our greatest strengths. Now, I could take the time to brag about each person in the squadron, but it's hot, and it would take all day. The staff from the 413th has gotten a small peek, and a very small peek that is, into the unique mission of the 370th. And I hope it's opened your eyes just a little bit as to why we are so needy, why we have so many strange manning requests, and why we are not the cookie cutter squadron that the Air Force Reserve sees. My one goal this week was to show you that, and I hope that I did that. As I take command of the 370th, my mission and my vision as the new commander is clear. First, to provide the squadron the manning and resources to accomplish the world-class test support the 412 Test Wing needs, and second, to take care of my people. To accomplish the mission, we have a great foundation in place, thank you to Ross and the commanders before him. One area that I want to see grow is homegrown flight test. We are well on our way thanks to the efforts of many in our squadron, including a roll-on, roll-off day-link pallet, RTEC 2.0 upgrade to Tail 320, which was over there in the wash rack and it's since been moved. The addition of a third tanker, hopefully next week, to Edwards Air Force Base. Mission support at the multitude of test squadrons on base, as well as the test support tanker mission that we have here, is the backbone of the 370th. I would love to see it grow even more. And my hope is that through targeted abdication, we can continue to hire and retain talent from the Air Force's test enterprise. Beyond accomplishing our test mission, we must continue to sustain and maintain the members of this squadron. 370th members, without you, the mission doesn't happen. Without you, the military members and civilians who make up the 370th, without you, the squadron is an empty building. The mission cannot be done without you. My mission as commander is to support you in your efforts, your hopes for the future, your desires for promotion, to help you grow as individuals, as a team, and as leaders. I will work hard to make sure that you all feel heard and that I provide opportunities to you to grow should you want them. Lastly, I'd like to point out how amazing the 370th is. Just this last year, 370th members were scheduled to fly over 800 sorties and 13 different aircraft types. We were scheduled to pass over 5.8 million pounds of fuel. And at Test Pilot School, 370th members flew 243 sorties, taught and managed the enlisted tested course, advanced cutting-edge AI curriculum, taught high angle of attack, courseware, stall spin departure classes, and mentored 48 new test professionals. Flight test matters. Now let's talk about this year. Just this year, enlisted boom operators were on the cutting edge and among the first to refuel the B-21. 370th members were the first to give the hands of a cutting-edge AI airplane autonomous intercept capability. 370th members were critical enablers for national security missile defense. 370th members helped lead the future of fighter combat through involvement in F-35 and future sixth-generation platforms like F-47. I've only scratched the surface, and I could go on all day, like I said, but the point is that every single person at this squadron is vital. Each person adds a key capability. Every member here in attendance, and even those who weren't able to make it today, play a critical role in our flight test mission. Flight test matters. In closing, I'd like to say how humbled I am to be taking this position as commander of the 370th. I wasn't exaggerating when I said this squadron is the most amazing, awesome squadron in the Air Force. I'm excited for what the future holds, and I'm confident that regardless of what happens or who calls, you can bet that amongst the aviators, aircrew, and engineers out there, you will see the flying Elvi taking care of business. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Downing. Lieutenant Colonel and Miss Downing, the men and women of the 370th Flight Test Squadron welcomes you. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand and join us in the singing of the Air Force song, follow the departure of the official party. Ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've all been waiting for. This concludes today's ceremony. You are now invited to congratulate Lieutenant Colonel and Miss Downing in the receiving line at the back of the hangar. We ask you please remain in place until our distinguished visitors in the first 3 rows have departed. Thank you for attending and have a great Air Force Day.